two people from NASA were attending the pitch, and we were talking about like how to grab a satellite in orbit and move it. And the two guys said, "Oh, we don't have questions. We don't even have like comments. We have a suggestion for you. You should stop immediately what you want to do and go back and start the game from zero." The idea of having a vehicle capable of grabbing a satellite in orbit was totally out of the imagination.
Space is humanity's greatest laboratory. Defense is democracy's strongest shield. And today, in workshops, in laboratories, in startups, a new generation rises, not to observe history, but to write it, where every innovation above drives progress below, where every breakthrough in defense preserves our freedom to create. Behind every breakthrough stands a founder with a story. Now these stories emerge to light the path for those who follow. Welcome to Rockets and Radars.
Hey Luca, from developing a deorbiting device at Politecnico di Milano to raising 150 million euros for the orbit and revolutionizing space logistics, let's crack open, in my case, a beer, in your case, Prosecco, and let's get into the journey how you made space sustainability a reality. Before we get into the story, I was very curious for the listeners that might not know what the orbit actually is. If you could tell us a few sentences of what you're doing as a company, that would be amazing.
Yeah, sure. So the Orbit is a logistics company, but the logistics that we offer is actually in orbit. So our goal is to create this logistics infrastructure, not just to serve the existing new space market, but also to pave the future for the expansion of the human race in space. So our goal is to connect, for example, Mars, the asteroid belt, Moon, and Earth through this logistics infrastructure capable of transporting goods, people, information, and energy.
Can we call you space taxi? Is that a good?
Yeah, that's one of the, let's say, that's one way. They told us that we do last mile delivery of satellites, space taxi when we grab the satellites and move them into another location through in-orbit servicing, space cloud.
Yeah, there could be many words here. Awesome. Super cool. Let's get into the main story. So everything started in 2011. You were finishing your PhD, and I'm very curious if we can get back into that moment and just explore what was going on in your head before you actually press the button of starting a company.
Yeah, so in reality, the idea of getting into space started when I was a kid. So, it's like 5 years old kid, you want to become an astronaut. And I was in a mountain with my uncle, and my uncle was explaining the stars in a very scientific way. And I remember that I didn't understand pretty much anything about what was telling, but I do remember that I thought, okay, I want to go there and check by myself what the stars are. And so I planned my life to become an astronaut. So all the studies, you find a lot of like degrees and certificates, not because I like to study, but because I had to, right? So you need to certain degrees in order to apply to the astronaut contest. And in Europe, you have one chance in a life. So it's not like in US that you have a dozen astronauts every year. Europe, it's all in. So I studied in Italy. I went to US. I studied there. Then I came back, and yes, I did my PhD in Italy. During my PhD, I started two companies. One that was producing drones when drones were not cool, so long time ago. The other one, we were providing special effects for the movie sector. We even go to the Oscar with one of the Italian. We didn't win the Oscar, by the way, but it was a really nice experience. So, and this is so my PhD ended in 2008, and 2009 the astronaut contest came out. So I went through the astronaut contest, and if I'm here today, I'm not an astronaut. So something didn't go as expected. And that was a weird moment of my life because basically I did all in, right? So I didn't have a plan B. And then I have to figure out what to do with my life. So I had two companies, but I created the companies to have the flexibility of preparing for the astronaut contest. So at that point, the astronaut dream was gone. And And I was lucky enough. That's a nice story. So I went back to the main building of the Polytechnic of Milan. It's a like old building with the marble on the floor. Like everything is very very clean. And I always walk with my backpack. And like moving around, I basically hit like a sign, and the sign fell. And in order to grab the sign and put it back, I hit a vase full of like plants and everything that basically hit the floor. So it was like a big mess of this white marble, and I was kind of embarrassed. So I tried to clean it up, and then I read the sign, and the sign was about the Fulbright scholarship to go to US, study business, and they were basically paying for the tuition, the trip, the housing, and they were giving you $1,000 per month just for paying for your own expenses. And I said, wow, that's it doesn't seem true. That's where is the trick, right? So what's the catch here? And in small words, in the sign was it was indicating that day at that time on the second floor they were explaining this scholarship. So I went up on the second floor and basically I said, oh, wow, this is real. So I applied. I won this Fulbright scholarship. I went to Silicon Valley to study business. And in order to get there, you need to have a business plan, like a business idea. And I said, well, it's why not? It's a good way of testing if I can go back to space, not as an astronaut, maybe with my own company. So I went to Silicon Valley. That idea actually didn't work. So it was killed during the very first week in Silicon Valley. Then, if you're interested, I can tell you the story about that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very curious.
Okay, so as entrepreneurs they have a big ego, right? So typically entrepreneurs have a big ego, and I do have a big ego. So I went to Silicon Valley with a business plan, and I said, "Wow, Silicon Valley is where the money is. So for sure they will give me money because my idea is great." So the very first week, I was attending at the Santa Clara University as like the main site for this certificate in business. And then some training was done at Stanford and some others at Berkeley. So basically the entire Silicon Valley. And I said, okay, let's organize a meeting with the VC in Menlo Park. And like in US, the universities are very good at that. So you ask and you get. So I got this meeting. I went to meet this venture capitalist. I was in this meeting room with my laptop attached to the screen. So one slide, second slide. And then the guy picked up the phone and exit from the room. And I said, well, maybe he went to I don't know, he had a phone call or went to the bathroom. I don't know. So I was waiting. And after 10 minutes, the secretary came in and he asked me to leave the room. I said, no, I'm waiting for, I don't remember the name. And I said, I'm waiting for John. I said, no, the meeting is over. And I said, but still the ego. I said, wow, these Americans are very arrogant. So, not nice people. So I went back and then I met Barton Lee at Stanford. He's a professor, but also member of the Space Angels. So Space Angels are business angels with the idea of investing in the space sector. I said, wow, that's for me. That's a sign. So I invited him for dinner in Palo Alto at the Italian restaurant. Italian restaurants are not very cheap. So, and I paid for that. So I was, yes, I'm so sure that it's going to ended up well. So we were in this restaurant, and after 5 minutes that I was talking about my idea, he said, well, the idea it's not bad, but the way you are telling me your idea, no, I don't think it's going to work. So it's how I was presenting the business and the initial team that I put, that basically I didn't really pay attention on the basics of the business. And venture capital understand very well that at the beginning you need to bet on the team, not even on the business and the market. Of course, they need to evaluate the market, they need to evaluate the financial stability of the idea. But if you don't have a solid team, then nothing is going to happen. So and that was the mistake. So even this, so I started again from scratch. I went. I do remember I was waking up at 4:30 a.m. every morning to go to have breakfast in Milpitas, where like a group of folks, a group of entrepreneurs were meeting, and they were exchanging ideas, inviting entrepreneur, like more successful entrepreneur to join and provide their experience. And I was taking note of the time. So I rebuilt from zero the business plan. Then I said, okay, now I need to test the business plan, but I didn't want to go to another investor because once you go to an investor and investors say no, it's very difficult to get back, like to come back later on. So I Googled business plan competition. And even in that case, I was lucky because I ended up at the RISE business plan competition. They select this new business idea in the finals. The RISE business plan competition is one of the biggest at worldwide level. At that time, we are talking about 2010. The first prize was $1 million non-dilutive money, so real cash. So imagine in Europe, you get a lot of handshake and pat on the shoulder. Good job, guys. A nice tag on the wall. And at the RISE, it's $1 million. So well, we didn't win the $1 million. We ended up in the finals, but not in the winning part of the, let's say, of the positioning. And we got $500 as a reward. But still, we understood that the business was feasible, and a big help was working at NASA. So while I was there, I joined NASA as an intern at the beginning. And basically, I ended up, so as a foreigner, it's not easy to get access to NASA. So basically, they placed me in what they thought was the worst team at NASA Ames. And that team was focusing on small satellites. That was a completely new thing at that time. So it was myself, and my boss was Chris Boschwitz and Will Marshall, the two founders of Planet Labs. And that was a real school for the new space. I have to say, from one side, SpaceX, right? So demonstrated that it was possible to work in the space sector in a different way. And then on the other side, you find Planet Labs. It was, as a matter of fact, it was the very first small satellite constellations launch. And so I was there in that moment. And actually, I was in charge of the economic feasibility of small satellites versus big satellites. And what I did later on, of course, Chris and Will took my report and transformed it into a real business plan. What I did was not a business plan. But then Planet Lab was created after that. So they created Planet Labs, and then I went back together with the business partner, Renato, that I met at NASA. We went back to Europe to create the Orbit. And even that, we went back to Europe thinking, well, no, we are coming from US. We have a business plan. It has been validated. Now we see that in few years, the market will arrive. Everybody will understand that, and we will find an investor supporting us. But in reality, it didn't happen.
What was your thesis within that business plan at that time?
So at that time, that's a very good question. So the original idea has always been that this logistics infrastructure, but it was too much science fiction. So the very first day that we came back to Europe, it was clear that we couldn't really talk about that. I'll give you an example. In 2011, we submitted a proposal to ESA, and the name of the proposal was Corridoras. Corridoras is the Latin name of the fish that clean the aquarium, right? So, and the idea was to, what today is called in-orbit servicing, to go and grab satellites and move them away. So it is true that in that proposal, we were using drawings based on Star Wars, like Millennium Falcon and the X-Wing. So probably ESA didn't appreciate the drawings, but basically that proposal was rejected. I still have the letter from ESA that is basically suggesting us to go back to study at the high school. Anyway, so it was really a moment in which no one was thinking that commercial space could happen in the traditional space. So it was very, very hard to find investors. I think up to date, I talked to, 580 investors in my life. And most of them I talked at the very beginning. They were all curious. But then they said, thank you, but no thank you. We are not interested in investing in science fiction. So what I did, I sold my shares in one of the company and I kept the asset of the other one. So we were able to start, and then we got the very first investor, we had a plan for €5 million seed investment. And that investor, after talking with a space expert, and I was in the same room with him when it happened. And, in the silence of the room, sometimes you hear on the other side of the phone when someone is talking. And I heard the guy on the other side of the phone that was laughing like crazy. So Nicola turned to me. Nicola is the investor. Turned to me. We are friends now. Turned to me and he said, "Look, I'm not giving you 5 million. If I'm going to invest, it's basically, it's like if I am a non-profit. So I'm really buying a lottery ticket here. So I give you €300,000 in exchange of 44% of the company. Take it or leave it." Yeah, and I took it. But the good thing is that the idea was so much science fiction at that time. Even the investors were not really believing that it could work. That I could make a bet with the investors. Say, "Look, okay, I give you 44% of the company, but if I demonstrate that the market will arrive and then we hit the milestone, then you give me back a portion of the shares." And like Nicola accepted that. That's why we are still friends, because it's a very smart, person with a lot of knowledge in the sector now.
Are we talking about 2011 still?
2011. 2011.
Okay, very early.
Yes, very early. And so we were able to get some of the shares back, not everything, but some of the shares we got back. Then, magically that clause from the shareholders agreement disappeared with the next investments round. We didn't really, at the beginning, you are always a little bit naive when it's a matter of understanding the term sheet from investors. And investors are very, very smart. So they know that founders typically focus on the percentage of ownership, while the percentage of ownership, it's not the most important thing. Because at the end, 100%, so 100% of zero is zero, and 1% of infinite is infinite. So it's not at the point, it's all the other clauses, the governance, all the liquidation preference, all those kind of stuff. So anyway, we started the company, and yeah, it was tough at the beginning, no money. We could hire only freshly graduated engineers. And that's why today we still have an average age in the company that is like 31.
I just have a very quick side question. So by the time you got there, do you have any learnings or anything that you would like to say to early stage founders that are listening right now? Any advice from this period?
Yeah, so I think we want to distinguish between two different types of business methodologies. So those that actually improve an existing technology. So I don't know, for example, propulsion. Propulsion is already existing, electric engines or like chemical engines for satellites, and then you create a better version, right? So something unique that you improve the technology, and that's one thing. And the other thing is creating an entirely new market. That is exactly what we were trying to do. So that's two different methodologies, two different roadmaps. When you create new market, after you created the market is really, really cool because you created the market. But in order to create a market, it's really, really tough. So even talking with customers, they tell you, thank you, but no thank you. It's pretty much, imagine to go to like people that is using pencil and the pen that does not exist, right? And then you go to them and say, "Look, I want to sell you a pen." And they will tell you, "Oh, I don't need a pen. I have a pencil. I can write anyways," right? So this is creating a new market. So, and it's at the beginning, it's really difficult because everybody's telling, "I don't need what you want to sell. It's really useless." So you don't have the support from the customers. The market is not there, so you cannot claim that there is a market. Investors will talk to the customers and they come back and say, "Oh, customers told me that your service is useless." So you don't get the money from the investors. So I think the lesson learned here it's like two. One, you need to have a team with a dream. So people that is really willing to bet their life into your dream, into your vision. That they people that are going to follow you because they trust you. And trust is a very important word. And the second is never give up. Because if you give up, you have 100% of probability of failing. So these two, if you have the right team, and the right team should not be based on competence. Yes, you need the competence, but you can buy competence. You need the right attitude, right? So in the attitude, you cannot buy. You have to find it. This is what I'm suggesting to those that are starting a new business. And it was well also on the other roadmap. Even if you have to improve a technology now, there's so much competition out there that you need to find the right people to keep working, to keep pushing, and to keep innovating.
So regarding Tim, how did you convince Renato to co-found a company with you then?
That's also, at the beginning we were 4 founders actually in reality, but we lost 2 along the way because they preferred to, at the beginning we didn't have money. So they said, well, we have a job that is paid better. So I'm not going to join. So basically we bought back the shares from the other 2 founders. But Renato, at the very beginning, so we met while we were both Fulbright students in the US. And then we joined NASA together. We were in 2 different buildings, but we were basically like talking to each other and hanging out together with other friends for basically a year and a half. So we became friends. And when I applied to the Rice Business Plan competition, at a certain point, when we were selected at the finals, there was a requirement. The requirement was you need to be at least 2 people, and I was one. And the other potential founders, they were back in Europe. So I said, okay, Renato, you are an aerospace engineer. You have a PhD in attitude control. I need you with me. You have to pretend to be part of the orbit. And so we both went to Houston. And well, actually, Renato, because our visa expired like 1 week before being to Houston. So I had to get back to Italy and then go back to Houston. And what Renato did, he went to Canada to get out of the border to get back. But he was not alone because he met a friend. And basically he called me while I was in Houston. I said, "Oh, Renato, where are you? Because now it's our turn to go on the stage and pitch." And he was still in Canada. So, Luca, I'm in love now. I don't think I'm going to come to Houston. I said, no, you have to come. So basically, I basically told to the organizer, so look, yes, Renato is here, but he's not feeling well. So it's, probably today is not showing up. And he arrived the day after at the perfect timing. So I was on the stage. I was basically ready to say, look, guys, I'm very sorry. I'm only me, so you can disqualify me. And actually at that moment, Renato arrived and walked on the stage as like normal, right? So, and we gave the pitch, and the pitch didn't go well. 2 people from NASA were attending the pitch. And we were talking about like how to grab a satellite in orbit and move it. And the 2 guys said, we don't have, let's say, questions. We don't even have comments. We have a suggestion for you. You should stop immediately what you want to do and go back and start the game from zero.
Why did they say that?
Yeah, because the idea of having a vehicle capable of grabbing a satellite in orbit was totally out of the imagination. In reality, NASA studied there a long time ago. So they were already, but probably those 2 people were there not for us. We were the only, let's say, space project at the Rice Business Plan. So they were there checking for different type of technologies. Maybe their expertise was not there, but I would say the arrogance, right? So of telling 2 entrepreneurs at the very beginning like that was not nice. But anyway, lesson learned, because we learned something about that. Okay, we need to communicate better. We need to change the narrative. Because if this is the feedback that we are getting, it's very likely the feedback that we can get from like everybody. So we need to find a different. That's why we start talking about space taxi or like the DHL FedEx truck. Last mile delivery of satellite, like talking more the normal language to make them understand that what we are doing, it's basically what we do every day on the Earth. We just do it in space.
Yeah, that's the thing. Communication is so underestimated in the industry, I think. There are a lot of companies that have amazing products, but they sell them as technical descriptions or even blueprints. This is our propulsion system, which is 5x better. I think that's what is still missing. But there are some great use cases like yourself, right, that explain it through analogies.
Yeah, I think, in reality, at the very beginning, so the issue we had, so we needed money, right? And we were unable to find money. In Europe, we were among the very first companies. I do remember there was I met the two founders of ISA, Rafal and Pekka, and they were coming at this exhibition with me, the three of us with a backpack and like sleeping in a very weird place, the cheapest that we could find. And there were not so many space companies at that time. So even the idea of having a business in the space sector was kind of new. So what I did, I said, okay, I need to get the audience knowing that space, it's actually way closer to Earth than they think. And how can I do that? I want to use communication to do that, but I didn't have money to pay the agencies like journalists and so on. So the best way to get the attention was to be on stage. So I applied to all the business plan competition, even if I knew that I couldn't win one. But once you are on the stage and you talk about space, everybody get, wow, space is amazing. And journalists start writing about you. And then you grab the attention of the audience, of the journalists, of the venture capitals, and then you start getting some calls, right? So communication is really important, and you need to adapt the communication to the people you are talking to. So
definitely, but this is a very good strategy for the very beginning. Okay, let's get back into the main timeline. So we were talking about you getting the first check of 300K. Was that right?
Yeah.
For 44% of the company. Okay, so first, how did you use the money? And second question would be here, what did you have with the product and within business? Where were you within the journey?
Yeah, so remember that I told you that we couldn't really communicate the entire business plan at the beginning. So we were communicating only the very first product. That was a decommissioning device. Because sustainability is basically a driver for the orbit since the inception. And whatever we do, it's going that direction. So the very first product was a decommissioning device. So it's an intelligent motor capable of removing a satellite at the end of life, even if the satellite is not working. So it's basically a small, very reliable satellite that you plug into a bigger satellite. And we designed it in this way because we knew that later on, the small satellite market would have arrived. So just to be ready to the new market. So at that time, that was our business plan. So we used the full 300K only for the first prototype. So we realized the propulsion system entirely, and we tested. And then we also built all the electronics around. So it was a box that we even flew to space. So the goal was to qualify for space, and we accomplished that. That's why we were able to get another tranche of investment, step by step. Still very little money. I think we raised 10 million in total after 10 years. So it took a lot to get some decent money. But in the meanwhile, we were moving step by step. Then we start selling immediately because otherwise we couldn't survive. So we were doing pretty much everything. There was a moment in which, so basically we almost ran out of money so many times in the life of the Orbit that, and once there was an investor that came into the office, and we had a very basic office. But the chair, like my chair, I kept my chair from my previous company. It was a nice chair. And the investor said, "Oh, wow, you have a nice chair." And I said, "Oh, do you want it? I can sell it for you. I can sell it to you for 100 euro. And then actually I sold it for 100. So, and then I went back to the regular chair with it.
Anyway, so regarding the 300K, so you were saying that you used the whole amount. What happened after, right? You couldn't run out of the money. You had to get the money from the outside. So what happened there? You mentioned another investment round, right?
Yeah, so we went through. So the seed, so in the contract for the seed investment, there were like the 300K. But then if we were able to accomplish some milestone, it was the qualification of the motor. We were eligible for another small tranche. That will increase my dilution, by the way, but it was an additional tranche of money. And then, in order to get the qualification in the first flight in 2013, we asked for more money. So, but what happened at that time is that the fund that committed to that was a binding committed. So we were really waiting for this tranche of money. That fund was acquired by another fund, and the management of the acquired fund basically left the company. So there was a gap, a management gap. So we didn't get the money, and we had to fly. We were supposed to fly with the Dnieper at that time, and the launch was scheduled in November. So we have to deliver by September everything, and we didn't have the money to complete to buy the last parts of our electronic system and the box for the payload. And so, and the money that they had were enough to pay the salaries, but not to fulfill the launch, or vice versa. If I decided to use the money for the launch, then no money for the people. That was not an easy moment, because we have to take a decision. And at that point, I said, okay, I'll give up with the idea of working in the space sector, and I'm not going to pay for the launch, but I want to keep the people, because we will figure out something, right? So we will find another solution, another idea, and then we will start working on that. And what happened is that my team, without letting me know, they bought with their own money the parts that were missing. And so they came to me and said, Luca, the payload is ready. And then we were able to launch. So in November, we passed the qualification on ground, and we launched to space. And in December, the investor came in and said, oh, by the way, we were forgetting, but this is the money that we were supposed to give you in March. And so everything went well. In December, as a Christmas present, I gave to the team the double of the amount that they put into the payload. But the spirit, the attitude, they didn't even know if they could get back the money, right? So it was really a bet. And these people are still in the company, and they are basically leading the different teams in the orbit. So that's the type of people you really want at the beginning.
How many team members were you at that point?
Oh, we were probably a dozen people in total in the company.
Okay, how did you find them?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder why those people decide to follow a crazy guy, with no money and just a crazy idea. I was hiring the people on the bar, on the street, with all the cars passing by, and I went to the universities, those days in which students meet the companies, and then I check on internet who was available. Then it was word of mouth, basically. People that was talking to other people. Oh, there is a guy that want to build a space company that is not the usual Thales, like Airbus, OHB. It's a new thing, and they join, and they sacrifice better paid job in other companies to come to the orbit. That was really, because at that time it was not so surprising for me. But now, if I look back, I said, oh wow, they were as crazy as me to join the orbit at that time.
I'm very curious about your thinking on who to choose. You mentioned attitude as your weight to choose people. How did you figure that out? What was their attitude during the interviews?
Yeah, so the way I was interviewing the people was not checking the capabilities. In some cases, I was hiring people, even if I didn't know exactly the position in which they could work, just because they had the right attitude. I don't know, for example, I was testing the resilience. I was trying to put them outside of their comfort zone during the interview, because when you work, especially in the space sector, but especially when you are creating a new market, you are constantly out of your comfort zone, and you still need to perform. So, and you can see people that basically cannot really make it. They just get confused, they stop talking, and they stop reasoning, and you don't want to have them on board. Even if they are, very good, they are genius in their subjects, but that's not the people that you want at the beginning. And those that actually are calm, reflect, maybe in some case they don't give you the right answer, but they are capable of reasoning. So say, okay, this is how I would do. I would do this and this and this and this. And that's actually the right attitude. People that if they bounce into a problem, they don't lose the calm and say, okay, I need to solve the problem. And if I don't know how to solve the problem, I ask for help and someone will come and then together we will solve the problem. So all these type of interviews, and you can find many exercises that you can run with the interviews to test these capabilities.
What was your favorite exercise to test this?
So I was making, like for example, there was this exercise I was asking to do where I said, imagine you are a dentist and you live, I don't know, where do you live, Martin? In which city do you live?
Oslo, Norway.
So how many people lives in Oslo?
750,000.
Okay, 750,000. So how many? And you want to be a dentist, right? So and you want to create your studio in Oslo. And how many dentists do you think there are in Oslo?
I have no idea, but around maybe 50, not more.
50 dentists. So, and you want to be the 51st, right? So you want to be one more. Do you have a market? So if there are already 50 dentists in 750,000 people town, is there enough space for you? And I was interviewing space engineers. So the reasoning was they have to calculate to say, okay, so how much money does a dentist make? Or what's your guess of how much money? And then you calculate, is there a market for that? And then I was asking the opposite. So consider that you make this amount of money, and now you are in Oslo. And so I wanted a reason in two ways. One, like starting from the assumptions, like top down, and the other one was bottom up. And most of the time, they were finding like the answer was completely different from the previous answer. And here, and at that point, you see those that try to justify the previous one, but they said, oh, wow, you're right. I have to change the assumptions. So completely different attitudes. The first one is not what you want. Why justifying a mistake? You don't have to justify. You just need to raise a hand. Oh, guys, I did a mistake, but I have a solution, right? The second attitude is what you want. So it was not even, I didn't want to hire dentists. I want to hire people with the attitude of saying, yes, I'm ready to do mistakes. Actually, I want to do a lot of mistakes at the beginning and learn a lot.
This is super amazing. Well, thanks for sharing. Okay, let's get into the main timeline. So you got the first ticket of 30K, then you got the extension after all of those events happen in that high, intense way. How much was that? How much was the extension?
I think it was 1.1 million.
Okay, and that was still seed, or have you been talking about it as Series A?
That was the second part of the seed.
Okay.
Then we got, I think, 3 tranche of the... Sorry, that was the pre-seed. We considered that the pre-seed because we didn't have the product, right? So then we enter into the seed stage where we met a group of angels that they invested. But the amount was still in the order of $1 million or so. And then the real round A came very late with Seraphim Capital. But that's interesting because I met Seraphim Capital. Seraphim Capital, it's one of the biggest space funds. So it's a venture capital fund specialized in space. They are based in UK. Now they are a public fund. So they went to the stock exchange. And at that time in 2018, they were still a startup as well. So the two founders, basically they had the same issues that the Orbit had to find money, because they have to raise money from limited partners. They have to raise money from venture capital. So I met them in 2018, but they didn't invest at that time because they didn't believe that there could be a market on what we were doing. But one guy at Seraphim, we kept in contact because I like to say that he was our sponsor, and I prefer not to mention his name. He doesn't want to, but great guy. We kept in contact. Then in 2020, when we were launching the first Ion, he came back and said, Luca, are you still interested at Seraphim? And said, well, yes, I am. And so we started again the due diligence, and we ended up with the first let's say investment from Seraphim in a round A, and we raised like Seraphim and another couple of investors, and we raised 6 million. So the total would be around 10 million in total raised up to that moment. And with that money, we were able to buy the launch and build the Ion that basically was launched in space. And then, in terms of round, we didn't raise anything else until we decided to go public. And then we stopped the go public. Very luckily, it was very, very hard moment, a very difficult decision to take. Now it's easy to say, oh, it was a very good decision, but at that time it was really tough. And then we raised 150 million last year. It took 2 years, so it's not as it seems when you read the newspaper. Oh, the Orbit raised 150 million. Yeah, it took 2 years to raise that money. It was really, really tough.
Okay, awesome. Well, we covered all of the funding rounds, so let's now talk if you have any, again, learnings or reflections on how would you approach fundraising again if you would go back and you knew what you know now?
Yeah, so it's different when you reach a certain stage. The type of conversation you have, it's different from the type of conversation you have at the beginning, and also it's different if you are talking with European investors or US investors. So in US, investors are selling to you their funds. So because they are in competition. So of course they are very strict on due diligence. They are not giving away money, right? But the approach is different. You talk at the same level. In Europe, there's a lot of demand and not enough money. So investors are looking at you from above, right? So the way you manage the conversation is different. But doesn't mean that they are bad people. It's just because the demand is higher than the offer, right? So it's a market law. So first of all, you need to study very well the investment fund. So in US, for example, you find people with the entrepreneurial experience in the fund. So you can talk in a different way because they understand what it takes to create a company. In Europe, now it's changing Europe, but at the beginning there were mainly people coming from banks. So their attitude and their way of judging the business was really focusing on the numbers and a lot of the risks. While in the US, said, well, I'm giving you money because it's a risky business because I want to make like 100 times the money that I'm giving you. So it's like a different concept. So you need to study a lot the funds, and not just the fund, but also the people who works in the fund. You don't want to just talk with the fund. You want to talk with the right person in the fund that it's more similar, that can understand the business you are in. So you have to study the profile. And I was checking where those people now if there are like investors listening, I was checking like the events in which those people were going, and I was going as well. And I was trying to get on the stage, because if you are in the audience and then you go to an investor, you are no one asking for money. But if you are on the stage, then they are coming to you, right? So at least when you go to them, they recognize you as one of the speakers. It didn't work almost never, right? So, but those times that actually work allow me to get a very good relationship with those investors. And at the beginning, it's just don't ask for money immediately, because they are used to listen to people asking for money, because you need to study them as well. And so while you talk to them, try to ask for suggestions, and you see how they think. And if you think there is a match, they will feel this match. They will feel this connection. And at that point, you develop a relationship, and then you can create the strategy to get investment done. Not always you have the time to do that. So like in our case, sometimes we were like desperate for money. So we really needed money. And so at that point, you accept just the money, not the help on top of the money. But I think now, even in Europe, especially at seed level, round A level, it is possible to do a selection of the investors and be more selective. And this is definitely going to help the business.
You mentioned that you research people in the funds on a personal level, individual level. What was your approach? What were you looking for?
So the background, the degree, where they worked before, So I was trying to avoid as much as possible bankers because the risk perception was not compatible with the space sector. And there were no funds specialized in space. So you have to imagine there was no, now you can find, the space segment in every fund. But at that time, space was really totally out. So I was checking if they had experience in business with similarities like pharmaceutical sector. Because in the pharma, you need a lot of capital, and the capital need to be very, very patient because it takes a lot of time before you get the first revenues. And then you get a very high return. So it's very similar to space, capital intensive, a lot of time, and then very high return. So was looking for that type of people, or like biomedical, even like semiconductors, this type of automotive as well, because you need like a plant, you need automation. So those type of experience were allowing the investors to understand better what we want to do, and at least you speak the same language. And this is really helpful to build up. But as I said, sometimes you just talk with financial investors, like purely financial investor, and sometimes it clicks with them as well because that they are simply different and it works. So it's really case by case. But if you don't study, you just go by chance, then you need to live with the fact that you have a chance that is very, very small.
Again, super interesting approach. Very, very valuable. Okay, we'll stay on the topic of funding. So you also raise some public funding or grants. In your case, also Horizon 2020 from the European Commission. I'm very curious to get in your head to understand how you think about grants versus investor money. If you have any differentiation between those, and I'm also curious to ask you, when would you choose grants over investor money and vice versa?
Yeah. So there are no only advantages or disadvantages in both sides, right? So it's not that you get the money from European Commission in this case, of the space agency, and that's actually non-dilutive money, so way, way better than the investors' money. That's not the case. So if you get grants, then the money is really, really slow. So it means that with your own money, it takes 1 month to produce something. With the public money, it's going to take a year, right? So you have to take that into account. So you move way, way slower, and you have to be prepared because the bureaucracy behind the public money, it's such that sometimes you get way less than what you are expecting because you spend a lot of money in consultants to basically just filing the reports to the public entity. That's totally crazy if you think about it. It's typically of Europe. In US, it's completely different. But we have to live with this. So the real decision is, do I have time to save cash and go with the public money, or am I going to lose competitiveness and be out of the business if I accept that? Then in that case, you need to raise private capital and go with your own money. There was a very nice example. I got some money so the first time we got another contract, was 2.5 million to develop the very first ion. So we got a contract in 2018. I'm not going to mention the agency, okay? So it was a European one. 2.5 million to develop the very first ion. And as I mentioned, we flew the ion so the very first ion actually was ready in 2019, but then Vega was late. So we launched it so it was ready at the end of 2018, but then
by the way, just for the context, so you started with D3 decommissioning device, and then you pivoted to ions.
So the D3 was, as I mentioned, it's kind of a satellite that then we start producing small satellites, DSAT, and then the DSAT became the inner core of ion. That is a transportation. So that's the evolution of the products. So and then the launch was delayed, so we launched it in 2020. But in reality, we developed the ion outside of that contract. So you know where we are now? We still have this contract running, and we are at the PDR, preliminary design review, in 2025. So Yeah. So, we decided at a certain point, we said, okay, if we keep going with the agency, we will never get to the market. So we better raise some capital. That's why Seraphim came in. And then we were able with that money to fly higher. So yeah, that's a decision. But for example, now there are other reasons why you want to go and work with the public institution, especially now where institutions are extremely important for the space sector. In some cases, now we are working on this in-orbit servicing vehicle, right? So we are building, and we signed a 20 million euro contract like in last November. And we had this, so we raised the capital to develop the in-orbit servicing vehicle by ourselves. But then we start talking with the customers in Geo. And basically, they said, "Oh, we will never let you touch our satellite." And then they said, "Well, have you worked with ESA on that? Because if you work with ESA, then this is reassuring, and then we can work together." So they say when you work with the institution, especially the space agencies, they have a lot of knowledge and expertise. Yes, they are slow sometimes. The requirements that they want to apply, they are not very good. But if you are able to establish a very good relationship with them and talk to them, they will understand. They will do whatever they can in order to streamline the process. This is what happened with this contract. I seriously believe that the contract we signed with ESA for the in-orbit servicing is going to open the door to a new way of signing contract with startups in the new space. So it took 1 year to sign the contract. So from the moment in which they said, okay, you won, to the moment in which we were able to sign, just after all the negotiation on every single clause, took 1 year. But now we have a team on the other side that is really helpful and helping us to get there as fast as possible. And on the other side, we get customers. So, wow, you are working with ESA. So that's reassuring. So let's work together.
Okay, interesting observations here. Regarding customers, let's talk about your very first commercial contract. Can you give us a bit of a glimpse on that one?
Okay, so as I mentioned, we start selling since the very, very beginning. So I don't really remember what we sell. We sold computers. We even sold a computer. The old style computer was a box to Airbus. Was a €1 million contract. Was a block like that, and the power of that computer was less than the iWatch. So it was old school radar with the software that was designed in ADA language that we don't use anymore, by the way. So old school technology. But I say that if I have to say the first commercial contract on the transportation business, that is our core business now, actually happened with Planet Labs. And you may think, well, that's easy because you were basically working with Chris and Will at NASA.
I wanted to say that you started, then here we go. You ended up there.
When I went to San Francisco to meet Chris and say, "Look, Chris, we have this idea. We think that can help you a lot." And he looked at that and said, "Well, we don't need it. We use differential drag. We can move our satellite around. So thank you, but no, thank you." So I said, "Okay, Chris," because we are friends. So I said, "Chris, you can tell me how much are you paying with SpaceX to fly your satellites?" And he was a little bit reluctant, Americans with that. And then at the end, he told me, and I said, "Okay, I give you a discount if you fly with me. And then while you are on board, I give you another discount if you test my service." So at that point, it was just an economic issue, right? So, and I said, "Okay, I'm saving so much money," because basically I was almost giving away for free. So very big discount. Then they said, "Okay, I take the risk and I fly with you and I test your service." And after the launch, we started deploying the satellites. And then I got a call immediately. Said, "Okay, we want to book also the January flight." So it was November. And in January, they had plenty of satellites to launch. And I didn't have the money to build 2 vehicles. So I had the money only for 1 Ion. So they have to put fill up one entire Ion, and the other they put as a regular on the rocket. But that was nice because AGI US took a snapshot of the satellites after 1 month, showing where the satellite that I deployed were after 1 month, and where all the other satellites of Planet Labs were after 1 month, the one deployed directly from the rocket. And we are using this image with the investors, to show the benefits that we are delivering, because our satellites were already ready to do business. The other were still packed close to each other. So let's say, in bad luck sometimes. If you are able to navigate through, you can extract some value.
Yeah, definitely. And you just explained many examples, also with the events, right? Just go, and even though if you don't get anything, you will get something in the end, maybe. But if you got something in the end, it was great for the next chapter, right, of your journey. Okay, there's one more thing I'm very curious about, and that was the failed SPAC deal. So when you wanted to go public, you decided to not go public after that. So I wanted to get into your head again and understand what was going on.
Yeah, so we were preparing for our round B, and at a certain point, there was this huge wave of SPAC going to NASDAQ and IC. And basically, like most of them came to us, say, oh, look, the Orbit, you are perfect. You should go public. You should go public. And our investors said, okay, now it's the moment. Why don't you go public? So we will have an exit. It's at the right moment. Everybody's going public. And so we picked, so we like to be the underdog in the market, right? Because if you are the underdog, you are not disturbing the market, you work in your niche, and then if you are really good, then you can grow. So we took the smallest SPAC with only 100 million, 130 million inside. And then we decided to go for the lowest valuation. That was still a crazy valuation because all the valuations were like too much. But we said, okay, because we are not going public to exit, we are going public to keep growing the company. So if I start small, then I can keep growing. If I accept a bigger valuation, yes, I get less dilution, but then it's like more difficult to increase from that. And so that means that the team at the SPAC, that, by the way, a Texan team, they were amazing. So really friendly people, very cooperative, and we started working together. Everybody was happy. So we went through the process. The SEC, like several, like I think 3 or 4 loops with the SEC to get the final approval. And we got the final approval was the summer of 2022. There was this like the Orbit logo in Times Square. I still have the picture. And it was my first time that I bought a business class ticket to go to New York, to press the button, because at NASDAQ you have the button. Mm-hmm. And basically at that time in 2022, the market started to go very, very bad, right? So, and we were aware of that, but we said, well, after this like 1 year of preparation and everything, and that day when the SEC gave us the approval, one of the US investors that put the money in the PIPE is private investment in public equity. So basically they don't give you directly the money in your bank account. They commit to the money. Then when you go public at the day 0, then you get the money and they can sell immediately the shares. So typically the share price spikes up and then they sell so they can make money and then you have the money. And he said, I'm not giving. So he came to me and said, I want to give you more money. I want to give you $120 million more. I said, what? Happy to get this 120 million. We had 3 million at that point. And he said, yeah, but I'm not going to put it into the pipe. I'm going to give you through a different instrument. I said, which instrument? So, well, it's pretty much like an ATM. So you pre-authorize the shares before going public. Then when you go public in the following months or like after a year, you call me and you tell me, okay, I want to sell like 10 million, 15 million in shares, and I will do it for you and I give you the money. I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. How does it work? How you calculate the price? I said, oh, very simple. You call me and then I start calculating in the following 5 days what is going to be the price. I calculate the average and then I give you the money. And I said, well, probably not the following 5 days. You mean the previous 5 days? They said, no, the following 5 days. I said, so that's, in this case, you can short the share price. And, it was very transparent. They said, oh, yes, that's exactly how we think we can make money out of it. And I was surprised. I said, wow, this is a toxic instrument. And I said, well, this is the best instrument that you can find in the market right now. And then at that time, immediately you realize that the market was not just bad, was completely gone. And I said, okay, if I go public, I will die the day after. So I went back to the shareholders. It was the most difficult decision to make because imagine my shareholders, they were since the inception with a like 3 digits multiple, literally. They could have made money even at $1 or less, right? So I was expecting a lot of pushback and like people telling me, no, now you go public, we don't care. And they have the power to do so because I don't have the majority of the company. So I start talking to them, explaining the situation. And at the very beginning, silence. No one was talking. And then suddenly one stepped up and said, I was like the second to invest in the company. I waited up to now. I'm willing to wait more. And then another one, and then another one. And then at the end, everyone, not even one, was against. So everyone, all my shareholders said, Luca, we are with you. Stop the process. Let's find another way. And then I called the SPAC. And even in that case, I was ready, like, I was expecting that they would have fight back. And actually, very nice people say, oh, Luca, we understand. We don't want to ruin the Orbit. The Orbit is a great company. And, those people are actually losing their own money. But they were so cooperative and they helped us to get out of the deal. But at that point, we didn't have the money, right? So we were like 300 million the day after zero. So anyway, so we were still making revenues.
Super interesting story. You mentioned that all of the shareholders were really nice people. It looks like that. So I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question. How do you pick shareholders? Not employees right now, shareholders.
So shareholders are not always nice people. Depends on the moment. So shareholders are like they work in cycle. Because you have to understand that the founder's objectives, so the company objectives, and the shareholders' objectives, the investors' objectives, are not aligned always. So at the end, the only thing that counts for the shareholders is making money, for the companies to have an impact. So the company has a goal that is a very long-term goal. You have a vision. You want to accomplish, you work for the expansion of the human race in space. Investors doesn't care. They want to make money, right? So you need to make sure that whatever you do, allow them to make money. That's in this way you have the shareholders helping you. When they perceive that there is a misalignment, then they are against you. And it's always a cycle because sometimes you need to fight because if you think too much short term, as typically investors do, then you are not able to go ahead with your business. So you have to fight, and then you fight against your shareholders. But then you have to align again, and so on. So it's really a cycle, and there are moments in which you fight a lot, and there are moments in which actually you get along very, very well. But that's normal because the final objectives are different. So you have to be prepared also to, I'd say, to communicate in a different way. Then, I'm known not to be, let's say, investors say that I don't communicate too much with them, but then at the end, I do things, right? So I make things happening. So they don't like when I don't communicate to them too much. So they complain a lot. But then when they see the results, they are happy. So you have always this up and down. But overall, they are supportive. I don't think there is the best of the best investor, as I don't think there is the worst of the worst. It's just to pick the right one in the right moment.
Awesome reflection. Okay, let's talk about the future. The journey so far was super amazing. Where are you going in the next 5 years as a company?
So now our goal is to get there, right? So this infrastructure, and if you think about if you start from the end, in order to get this interplanetary infrastructure, you will need very big vehicles. It's unlikely that we will be able to build the vehicles on Earth. So we will need orbital manufacturing. And if you think about that's quite logical because we don't build boats on the desert and move them into the sea. We build boats directly on the sea. So why should we build satellites on Earth if we are going to use it in space? So orbital manufacturing is definitely going to happen. But even if you have orbital manufacturing, then you need raw material, because if you keep bringing the raw material from Earth, then you are not really solving the problem. So, and where is the raw material? Well, all the satellites that are already there, all the junk satellites, all the garbage that is in space. But how you grab the the garbage and bring them to the recycling stations, and then from the recycling station to the orbital manufacturing, then you need a vehicle capable of grabbing the satellites. It's basically an orbit service, and this is what we are doing right now. How can you make sure that you have 100 like vehicles in orbit and you don't spend too much money on controlling them manually? Then you need to have a lot of computational power on board. But computational power comes with a lot of energy. Energy comes with very big solar panels. That means weight. That means cost. And the more the complexity of the mission, the more the cost will increase. And so how can you solve it? Well, you use a cloud. So the cloud computing in orbit will take away a lot of computational, let's say, effort. And then your vehicle is just doing the last mile of the computational part. So you need a cloud. How you create a cloud? You need nodes in orbit. But so sending just a node in orbit is not economically convenient. So it means that the node need to be capable of doing something else. And our nodes are capable of doing transportation of satellites, technology validations, and so on. So today we are the line of business of transportation now. It's up and running. It's going well. Now every satellite operators on this planet understand the value of getting into their position as quick as possible. We have recurring customers that are like growing exponentially, and this is going well. A new wave of companies are coming to us for testing the technology right now, and we are really seeing amazing technology. Because the issue is that if you don't test it in orbit, no one is going to buy it. So we decide to dedicate a focus on that. I'm not making money out of that because it's my investment into the ecosystem, basically. Because I'm basically barely paying my costs in order to do that. But if I'm successful, those companies will either become my suppliers or my customers tomorrow, right? So, and they will help other companies to do the same. And this is going very well now because, of course, I'm not a non-profit company. So we start making deals with governments, and they are buying the space of the ION, and they are giving the money to the companies to support them in the IOD. And satellite constellations start coming to us asking to rent the satellite to put their payload only to save money and to have still a satellite, because our satellite can move from orbit to orbit. So you have a failure in one orbit, I can move mine, go there and substitute your satellite, and you don't lose the performance of your business. And this is going, let's say it's just started. So I'm making, some revenues that are growing, but these are recurring revenues. So it's good in the business model. And then in orbit services just started. So we still don't have the vehicle. So in the following 5 years, we will keep working on the transportation with bigger transportation vehicle. The cloud is going to skyrocket. The in-orbit service is going to skyrocket, and we will start developing the next phase. The next phase is very likely going to be, recycling plus orbital manufacturing.
Amazing vision and amazing journey that we have covered. Now we go to the last section of this podcast, which are quick fire round questions. If you remember, what is the toughest investor question you have ever got?
The unit economics at the beginning. You are not prepared at the beginning for the unit economics because you are creating a market.
And that's a good one. Okay, next one. What is the best founder advice you have ever received?
Don't give up.
What is your proudest technical achievement?
Demonstrating the successful of the transportation business.
Building a space company in Europe, what do you think needs to change in the ecosystem?
The mentality. If you think that if you are young and started yesterday, that you cannot deliver, that's not the right mentality. Doesn't matter the age and doesn't matter when the company started.
Awesome. And the last one, what would be your ultimate advice for technical founders transitioning from academia to actually creating a business?
Keep an open mind. Don't think that what you study is the only world in which you are going to live. Keep an open mind because you need to connect the dots with other technical fields, but also non-technical fields.
Awesome. Amazing answers and amazing journey. I really enjoyed this. This was a ton of fun stories, but also very good advice. Would you have any last thoughts you would love to share with the community, with our listeners?
So, man, maybe that I don't know if it is an advice, but maybe a suggestion. Think big in the sense that you really want to have a vision. So if you decide to become an entrepreneur, you don't do it for just making money. Making money is a mean to get somewhere else. So you need a vision. You want to have an impact. You want to change this planet. And if you work in the space, you want to change the universe, right? So if you have that and you really believe in that, you will have people following you, join your company and create an amazing company. If you just focus on money, maybe you are able to do also make it some money, but you will have no impact on this society.